Welcome everyone to this briefing brought to you by the Israel Defense and Security Forum, IDSF. In Hebrew, our name is Abitchonistim. IDSF is the leading Israeli organization advocating for strong national security policies to guide the state of Israel. Thank you, of course, to all of our viewers and supporters for tuning into these briefings. It's a great pleasure today to be joined by Brigadier General Yossi Cooper-Wasser, the former head of the Research Division at the Israel Defense Forces Intelligence Corps, as well as the Director General of the Ministry of Strategic Affairs. During his military service, he served, among other positions, as the Central Command's intelligence officer and as the intelligence attaché to the United States. He also participated in the Yom Kippur War and the First Lebanon War. General, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
There are many points I want to try to address in our limited time together. The first, which I think is on many people's minds, is this attack of the killing of these three top Iranian commanders in Syria. Are you able to comment about how crippling their deaths are to Iran? And what extent can Israel brace itself for a direct attack from Iran?
Well, definitely a very important attack that caused a lot of damage to the Iranians. I think at least for the short run, the effort to use Syria as a platform through which they arm Hezbollah, the Palestinians, and other forces in Syria itself is going to suffer a little bit, because these were the people with all the knowledge and experience that was so important for them to promote this effort for a long time. And these are very high-ranking officers, so I think it's a very painful blow for the prestige of Iran and for the leadership of Iran. So definitely the Iranians are now trying to figure out what is the best reaction to this attack. Of course, they attribute it to Israel, and I think everybody does. So they have to figure out what to do. So I think that they first of all have to figure out why Israel has chosen this timing for that attack. What does Israel mean to achieve through that? And I think the reason Israel did it, because I guess Israel knew about this location, this facility, for quite a while, and maybe there was an opportunity here, but it's more than just an opportunity. This is a strategic decision to launch such an attack. In my mind, what the Iranians might think is that, okay, the envelope of the rules of the game is being stretched. And yes, Israel attacked Iranians in Syria, which happens from time to time. And yes, Israel did it in the context of trying to prevent Iran from delivering weapons to Hezbollah and to other proxies. But it definitely stretches the limits of this envelope of rules of the game in Syria. And I think that the understanding of the Iranians is going to be that this was decided upon by Israel because they themselves were trying to stretch the limits of these rules of the game in recent days. They did two things that were interpreted in Israel as demanding some sort of a different reaction. One was the launching of the unmanned air vehicle, exploding air vehicle towards Eilat from Iraq, that hit an Israeli base in the Eilat area. And the second was the attempt to send very advanced weaponry to the Palestinians in the areas controlled by the Palestinian Authority. So these were two elements that were new in the Iranian way of fighting against Israel, and Israel has retaliated by stretching its envelope, its part of the envelope, in carrying out this attack. Now the Iranians have to decide whether they are going to move back and retaliate within the confines of this envelope, namely more attempt by the Iraqi forces to launch more UAVs to Israel or something like that, and more attacks from Hezbollah and the rest of the things that are within this envelope, or should they go and do something bigger? They have to take into account that it might be that Israel is prepared for something bigger, and that this may be very costly for the Iranians themselves if Israel is ready and is able to foil the attempts. So it's the Iranians are sitting on this issue as we speak and trying to figure out. We have to anyhow be prepared for any kind of reactions that the Iranians may choose. And the Iranian rationale is being challenged with something new that they have not been experiencing in the last 5 months, 6 months, as a matter of fact, that elapsed since the beginning of the war. So they have to really think hard, and it's very difficult to predict what are they going to do, and that's why we have to be prepared for any eventuality, any decision. I think the Israelis, I hope the Israelis took that into account before launching the attack, and are ready to face also other things that they can do beyond more of the same. Amongst the other things that we have to be prepared to is all kinds of attempts to hit Israeli targets abroad, which is something that the Iranians have done in the past. All kinds of attacks on cyber, and of course also, which is a low probability, but still we have to be prepared to an attempt to hit Israel directly from Iran. I don't think that this is highly probable, but it's possible, and we can't rule it out. We have to be prepared for that too. And the Iranians, of course, are trying to send signals that this is within their considerations. They have not decided, but they might do that. And we have a lot of information coming in that there are preparations and they're getting ready. I don't know if they're going to actually use it, but we have to take this very seriously.
Has Hezbollah's operational capacity been degraded by what just happened in Syria?
Not yet. It was not degraded, but it might affect its ability, the ability of Iran to build further capabilities for Hezbollah, because we keep hitting the shipments of arms on the way to Hezbollah. And now we caused a lot of damage to the leadership of this effort, as I said before. So I think that it's going to be more difficult for them to deliver arms to Hezbollah. At the same time, we keep hitting targets in Lebanon. From time to time, these targets are extremely valuable, including key personnel, key figures in the Hezbollah military forces, terror forces. We hit several people from the Radwan force, including the people that are involved in the launching of their anti-tank missiles and those who are involved in other operations. We hit people from the unit that is responsible for launching rockets, and we definitely managed to cause some harm to their anti-aircraft unit, including targets in the farther north in the Bekaa Valley, and also against their infrastructure that is used in order to launch UAVs towards Israel all the time. So they are suffering, and they also lost more than 250, according to their numbers, they lost more than 250 terror activists since the beginning of this war. So it's definitely a painful price that they're paying for their commitment to participate in the war and show solidarity with Hamas, and force Israel to dedicate some part of its forces to the northern front. They believe this is going to be on the expense of the southern front. I don't think so, but we have enough forces to fight on both fronts simultaneously. But they believe that this is something they managed to do, and they attribute to themselves the fact that Israel has taken some of its forces from the south and sent it to the north. So they feel that they can go on with that. But we make sure that they pay a very heavy price for that. And as I said, these are the elements of the price they paid, including very high-ranking terrorists.
Now, it was just announced on Monday that Israel has increased its emergency stockpile of raw materials to more than 2 billion shekel worth in the past few months to prepare for a potential all-out war with Hezbollah. When it came to Hamas, Israel was not prepared for war. Do you think that Israel's prepared now for war with Hezbollah?
Well, I think Israel is better prepared now than it was 5 months ago. I wrote a piece that I shared with some decision makers before the war that said that we have to be better prepared for a war because the war is becoming more and more imminent. And well, there was following this paper, there was a debate of whether how bad is our situation if a war breaks out. So it's I'm sure that now we are much better prepared. We are prepared not only from the point of view of stockpiles of essential commodities, but also from the point of view of weaponry. We are better prepared from the point of view of military preparedness of the units. They're all practicing. There are a lot of training going on in the context of a northern scenario. So I'm sure that everybody is better prepared. This doesn't mean that we are seeking war. If you seek peace, you have to be prepared for war. That's the famous saying, and I think that's what we're doing. We are preparing ourselves to war, hoping that this will convince Hezbollah to go for some sort of an arrangement that would make sure that the people of the northern villages of Israel, northern communities, will be able to go back to their villages and live there safely. And if Hezbollah is going to be ready to accept such an arrangement, we can avoid the war in the north. Everybody is under the impression that the chances of that happening is not very high. I agree, it's not very high, but it's not zero. And we have to do whatever we can in order to raise the chances that this is going to be the case. And all these preparations and stockpiling the necessary foodstuff and whatever is something that's going to help us convince Hezbollah that we are prepared for a war and make them more open to listening to diplomatic ideas how to handle this conflict.
Now, Israel seems to be getting more and more assertive and aggressive in the north. Do you think it's more likely that an all-out war would be started by Hezbollah, or would it be Israel to do that? And what would that look like? What is the turning point of this back and forth skirmish over the border versus an all-out war in the north?
Well, we are in an ongoing low, middle, and medium intensity war with Hezbollah that has the tendency of escalating gradually, but in a controlled manner for 5 months now, or actually 6. We are so close to 6 months, and that's something that both us and the Hezbollah showed their ability to control efficiently. Nobody lost control and ran into something that was forced upon him in spite of its will. It's not easy because mistakes can happen. We saw the mistake that we did with the food workers in Gaza. Such a mistake by Hezbollah or by us can cause escalation, rapid escalation in the north without the intention of any of the sides. So we have to be prepared for such an eventuality. Right now, I don't think that the turn from this ongoing medium level war that is controlled by the side is going to happen because of Israel. We are now focused on the south. We have to make sure that we finish the job there. And we believe that, and I believe at least, that the best way to have an impact on how the war is, how the situation with Hezbollah is going to develop, is to have a decisive victory in the south and to finish the job in the south. If we take Rafah, this is going to be the end of the major operations in the south. This would going to be a good point for Hezbollah to put an end to the war and maybe consider seriously a diplomatic solution. So otherwise, they know that we are now much more capable of moving our entire might northwards. And this is something they want to avoid. So I think that for the time being, we are focused there. Can Hezbollah decide to escalate? Of course they can. They know what are the prices. Until now, they've decided not to do that. They don't send messages that they are going to change it anytime soon. But we have to understand that all kinds of considerations go in the mind of Nasrallah, including what is the situation of the Iranians. The Iranians were now hit seriously, as I just mentioned before, and Hezbollah may feel that they have to do something to show solidarity with Iran, not only with Hamas, and especially as those people who were killed in the attack in Damascus were very close to Hezbollah, were very much deeply involved in supporting Hezbollah, they may consider that something that they have to take part in the retaliation to this attack and escalate a little bit more. And God knows, once you break this envelope of rules of the game that I mentioned before, Hezbollah can do it as well on behalf of the Iranians, and this may cause the wider escalation in the north.
Thank you. I want to pause for a moment just to thank all of our viewers who are tuning into this briefing and sending in their questions. We greatly appreciate your support and your questions, and it helps guide us in terms of what topics to cover and who to bring on to these briefings. And a reminder to all of our viewers, if you appreciated it and learn from these briefings, of course, feel free to spread the word and encourage your family and friends to sign up as well. And a good number of our viewers brought to my attention an article that was widely circulated in the Wall Street Journal. Jenna, I'd like to ask you about this article because the author really criticized Israel's operations in Gaza in 4 or 5 very significant ways. And I want to try to address some of those right now. So first off, this article in the Wall Street Journal suggested that Israel should have spent more time planning its operations rather than rushing into Gaza. And I'm not expressing my opinion, I'm merely using his wording. And in spending more time in preparing for Gaza operation, there should have been more of a focus on understanding the intelligence failure rather than rush into a ground assault. Are you able to comment on that approach?
Well, I think basically he's right. It's always better to spend a lot of time on planning. But sometimes it's not totally, you don't have the entire freedom to choose how much time you're going to spend on planning, because in this case, this war was forced upon us. We didn't prepare for this war, and that he's right. The article is right in pointing that we should have been better prepared and spend more time for that. I wrote a piece, very famous piece, Disarming Gaza. I wrote it in June 2023, and I called the government of Israel to sit down and prepare a plan for a war in Gaza that would deprive Hamas from the ability to arm itself. And I said at the time that if we do that properly, yes, we are going to pay a heavy price doing that, but the price that we are going to pay if we don't do that is going to be twice or thrice the price that we pay for doing that. And yes, they should have planned that at that time. That said, once the war was forced upon us, we spent the appropriate time. We couldn't postpone it more than the time we postponed it, because they were building up pressures on us not to carry out the ground operation, and we should have started it. And I think we began it on time. We couldn't wait more, and we did it in a very impressive way. I think the military and everybody in Israel is very appreciative of what we did. Regarding the question of investigating the intelligence failure before we go to the war, we have to make a differentiation between what we have to investigate and what we have to fight upon, the intelligence we have to fight upon. What we had to investigate was the failure of early warning, the failure that was made of 3 layers. One, understanding the enemy. Second, understanding its capabilities. Third, having the capability to have an early warning on time based on intelligence collection that would fit the understanding of the strategic and operational levels of intelligence. That was a major failure that we had because of 2 terrible conceptions that we had both about the enemy and about ourselves, combined with 2 terrible mistakes that we did on the night before the 7th of October, that we didn't sound the alarm when we had information that said something is wrong, and instead of sounding the alarm, we went to sleep until 8:30 in the morning. And another reason of this failure was that we didn't know what we know. We didn't know about the big plan of Hamas in details, but the people who were discussing what to do were not aware of that while they were discussing it. That was terrible mistake that caused us so many casualties. But this has little to do with the question of what you do once you enter the war. It's different kind of information and different kind of intelligence that you need for fighting the war. And the war and the intelligence for fighting the war was, I wouldn't say perfect, but was sufficient. And that's why we were able to fight the war successfully and surprise the enemy again and again and again and again. We managed to reach Shifa for the first time. We managed to reach Shifa for the second time, just on time in a very efficient way. We managed to enter Shati refugee camp on time because we knew where they were and how they were prepared to face us. We knew a lot. It doesn't mean that the intelligence was perfect. As I said, we had many gaps. This is the way intelligence operates. You just have to be able to close the gaps, and we did a big effort to do that. We wouldn't be able to close the gaps without the military operation, because the military operation enabled us to reach all kinds of piles of information that was waiting for us over there, and to take as captives many operatives of Hamas that gave us a lot of information during the war, and this enabled us to close the gaps. So I think that the operation was carried out on time. We could have done something better if we have started with Rafah instead of finishing with Rafah. Maybe the better way of doing that was to begin with Rafah. But this is already water under the bridge, so now we have to deal with Rafah, with the situation that prevails there now.
Now, another major claim in this article is that Israel should have spent more time on public diplomacy rather than jump into war, and that without sufficient day after planning, this war is really for naught and not going to be successful. What are your thoughts on that, please?
Well, his part, to some extent, is correct. I think we didn't put enough effort on public diplomacy. We should have done more. We were not attentive enough to the order of priorities of the United States. The main battle is over President Biden. What President Biden, it's not public diplomacy about the public opinion. It's one part of it, but it's a part of it because the public opinion have an impact on President Biden. And what's really important for Israel is what does President Biden think about the war. And we didn't pay enough attention, in my mind, to the fact that from President Biden's point of view, the most important thing right from the beginning was to make sure that this war does not involve more suffering to the Palestinian people in Gaza. And he adopted the idea that the population in Gaza is not represented by Hamas, and that this was right from the beginning. And he adopted the idea that Israel is not doing enough in order to bring in humanitarian aid, and Israel is not careful enough regarding avoiding civilian casualties. He was using, even though until some point he was saying these are Hamas figures or the Ministry of Health of Hamas in Gaza. But right from the beginning, they adopted the numbers that were provided by Hamas, forgetting to note that many of those casualties are actually terrorists. From the American point of view, this was not less important, maybe even more important, to avoid suffering for the Palestinian population in Gaza than releasing the hostages and defeating Hamas. Not that they are not supporting these two targets, of course they do, but they are as important as the Palestinian population safety and well-being, and if not a little bit less. We were not paying attention to that. We were so much consumed by the need to defeat Hamas, the need to release the hostages, then the need to use the defeating of Hamas in order to release the hostages. And we are paying a price for that, because I saw the president reaction to what happened in Deir al-Balach with the World Kitchen workers. This is... I mean, the way he referred to that was really reflecting a very problematic attitude from an Israeli point of view. And we should have done more. Regarding the day after, yes, I think that we should have been clearer from the beginning. I mean, the prime minister is quite clear, but his position was not adopted yet by the government. And I think we should be clear that we want to make sure that Gaza in the future we shall not be able to be a launching pad of terror attacks against Israel. And for that reason, we cannot allow the Palestinian Authority that supports terrorism, that didn't condemn the 7th of October massacre, that incites terror, that pays salaries to terrorists, that is at the same time a very weak entity that doesn't have any strong ability to govern Gaza in the future. We should say that, any delivering of authorities in the responsibility for Gaza to the Palestinian Authority will mean that soon after Hamas will take over again. We should have been clear that this is unacceptable. The prime minister was. The rest of the government, we have a coalition government, so it's not easy to reach an agreement even within the government. And the rest of the government did not adopt until now the paper issued by the prime minister. Gadi Eisenkot just presented a paper of his own that is not actually that different from the prime minister paper. But even in the prime minister paper, that doesn't state clearly that the Palestinian Authority cannot come back to Gaza. And people are still playing with this idea. And the fact that Israel doesn't say that it's ready to establish some sort of civilian administration in Gaza that would help the Palestinians to prepare themselves for self-rule of Gaza by people who are not involved in terrorism is like trying to have a free lunch. And unfortunately, there is no free lunch. And we have to be ready to establish a civil administration in Gaza by the military for a short period of time, let's say something like up to a year, in which we shall help those Palestinians after they are convinced that Hamas is not coming back, that they can come out of where they hide today and say, okay, I'm ready to handle the situation in Gaza. If you promise me that Hamas is not coming back, then until then we should have the control of Gaza. On top of, I mean, the one thing that everybody in Israel agrees upon is that Israel should have the overall security responsibility for Gaza, and that the military, the IDF, should have the ability to operate in Gaza freely whenever we have an information about a terror cell or any terror activity. We should be able to deal with it, and that we should be able to control the southern border and the border with Israel. This is agreed upon in Israel by everybody. But who is going to be the Palestinian side that's going to have a role there? And what is the role that would be given to the international community and to the Arab moderate states? This is still in the working. And we cannot blame anybody for not having a plan for that in advance. We shouldn't have waited for such a plan before we started the military operations. But we should have, by now, after 6 months of war, we should have been able to present a program for the plan for the day after.
Brigadier General Yossi Cooper-Wasser, thank you so much for joining this briefing. It's a great pleasure to be able to hear and learn from you. Thank you to all of our viewers and supporters for tuning into this briefing. We will be back with you tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Until then, stay safe, stay strong. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.